probably unrealistic constitutional revision. But the movement is now, so sometime next year, is to try to revise the government's interpretation of lack of collective self-defense. Japan, as far as I know, is the only country which specifically has a policy that it chooses not to exercise this right which is guaranteed in the United Nations Charter. It is the right to defend its own honor. Okay? And so because of constitutional constraints or otherwise. So in the long run, who knows? But I still think that the next thing I would say, I mean, Abe initially, in early his term, was talking about Article 96 of the Constitution. Article 96 of the Constitution says you need 2/3 majority in both houses and a majority of a vote in a referendum. 2/3 majority is extremely demanding. It's virtually impossible. So, and this argument has also been around since the 1950s. It's reduced that to 1/2. But he stopped talking about it. Why? Because everyone, well, not everyone, but just people didn't like it. All of the constitutional scholars opposed it, and the public opinion thought that this was just not the right way to rewrite the Constitution. To reduce the margin in which the Constitution, the nation's most important political document, which sets the basic sort of identity of a country. So.
I guess I was wondering, with Prime Minister Koizumi's like neoliberal economic reforms, I was wondering what was the public opinion or response to like the old privatization. I was kind of like surprised to hear like such a kind of like bold economic policy, especially in East Asian economic orientation. And I was wondering if that made Abe more popular coming after him with more like anti-liberal kind of like state power and more like state control. And also kind of on that, do you think that Abe's policies for state power and more, I guess, state involvement makes Japanese-American relations that complicated relations?
In U.S.-Japan relations?
U.S.-Japan relations.
Well, I'll try to be brief. So I think, again, that's sort of where the ideological ambition comes from. I mean, why? Maybe there's a better explanation, but it's hard to find why Koizumi was so obsessed with postal privatization since his adulthood. All we know that for him it meant $3 trillion of savings locked up and controlled by the state. So the postal savings deposits, it's one of the, I think it used to be the largest bank in the world, bigger than Bank of America, Citibank, and so on. I think it's now one of the biggest still banks in the world. $3 trillion of assets being lent out to things like highway building corporations, to state banks, which loan money to businesses. So I think that was his conviction, but also I think it was a political conviction that represented LDP, the old LDP, I would call the Tanaka faction LDP, Tanaka after the prime minister in the early 70s, which basically was, that's what it was. I wouldn't say Abe in his first term turned against Koizumi, that in fact he actually did try to continue Koizumi's reforms, but in his first term, what happened was, this is in the handout, but there's this term that you may be familiar with now called katsashakai, so the stratified society. And what was most important during Koizumi's time, privatization was important, but I think one very important thing is what's mentioned there, which is the revision to worker dispatching law. And this was very important, that in a nutshell, it made hiring and firing of irregular workers much easier for firms. There used to be a lot of regulations, which then supported the so-called permanent market system. And so that led to what Miyakawa-san said, which is a bifurcation of the labor market. And now at least a third of the entire labor force is actually irregular workers, probably nearing 40%. So I think that's what matters. I think that the main issue is at that time, there was not as much of a focus. I mean, I think I would argue that, and this could be, maybe Constantino can correct me, but Abe's style of politics now, I would argue, is economically neoliberal, but politically conservative. So it combines the two things. So state power is not, you don't have to be both politically and economically liberal. I think it's a economic neoliberal, but it's also a very typical, I would say, in developed democracies, brand of politics that the center right uses.
I think we have time for one last question.
And then we'll have first one.
By the way, while waiting for this to happen, I said to Consul General, some of us, especially me, may say something that may be critical to the Japanese government, and he said, "Oh, that's fine. This is an academic institution." I wonder whether you have any reflections to share.